Three, two, one. Greetings and welcome to the Vernon Richard Show. This is episode 1 or maybe episode 0 of our new pod. And please note that was Vernon Richard without the S, because I'm one of the hosts and we also have a co-host whose name is
Richard. Hello, everyone. My name's Richard Bradshaw. I am one of the co-hosts of the Vernon Richard Show. Oh, even I got it wrong. The Vernon Richard Show. We'll get there eventually, right?
Yeah. So what
Um,
we're talking about is software testing, software quality, on all related topics, and it's going to be just a conversational style, things that we've noticed in between episodes or things that are currently on our mind, and we're just going to get together. How often are we doing this? Every 2 weeks, and we're just going
to start with every couple of weeks. Yeah, so those are the topics, but also just generally life in tech.
Yeah.
The stuff that goes with that. Obviously, we have our expertise in that field, but everything else around life in tech. And I imagine football is going to come up a fair bit of time as well, given our ongoing football rivalry. But yeah, we're going to keep this very conversational format, and hopefully we're going to have a few kind of regular episodes in a slightly different format, maybe a bit more AMA style. Take some questions from the audience throughout, over the weeks, and basically we'll ask them live on the show instead of me and Vernon discussing whatever topics are coming up in our lives or careers. So Vernon, obviously I know you, but for anyone listening who doesn't know us yet, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Vernon. I am based in Leicester in the UK, which is one of those annoying places that if you see it written down, it's not pronounced how it's spelled at all. And I've been in the software and testing game for 20 years, and I know what you're thinking. 20 years? But you're only 22 years old. I'm a little bit older than I look. So I've been in this for 20 years. I started out testing video games, which was very cool. And then from there, I just went and did websites and vending machines. At one point, I was testing Formula One cars. That was very cool. And then over the years, I've moved into speaking and delivering training workshops and hosting events in person and online and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's me, Richie Rich. What about you?
Awesome. Yeah, so I think I'm 15 years now, so that makes me what,
Also old.
18? Yeah. And I think I'm 15 years into my testing software quality journey. Started off in banking as part of my placement degree, and then went through a lot of mobile space, got into talks, workshops, just general being active around the people in the industry. And at the moment, I am a senior architect within quality engineering. That's basically. Job titles are job titles. We should have a whole episode about job titles, but
We should. Do you want to know what mine is right now?
Go on.
So I have a day job with a health tech company based in Germany with a lot of incredible people, and my job title. I have to clear my throat for this one. Senior Expert Quality Engineer. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not just an expert quality engineer. I'm not just a senior quality engineer. I'm a senior expert quality engineer. Thank you very much. All bow down before me when you see me. But I also like to do a bit of quality coaching in that job and, outside as well.
That is a great job title. I didn't even know that.
Oh, mate.
Awesome.
Shout out to Dan Ashby for that one. I think this is all he's doing.
I'm curious what other job titles exist in the company now. But anyway, we'll go back with our first topic. So we decided to call this topic smoke test or the smoke test or smoke testing. We're going to see where it goes. But we haven't done this before, not on independently anyway. And I've never added podcasts to platforms. I've never edited a podcast. So I've only really been a guest on podcasts. So yeah, this is all new. So we're calling it the smoke test because we don't know if this is going to work. There's lots of stuff to set up. There's lots of stuff to even see. We don't even know if this is going to work. Like, just me and Vernon might just talk about football for a whole 30 minutes and no one's going to listen to that. So
I love how you said that. You're like, oh yeah, we've never done this before. Translation, neither of us knows what the f*** we're doing.
So that's why we called it the smoke test. But like let's dive into smoke testing, Vernon. Like,
Okay.
what is it? Like, or what is it in your world?
For me, whenever I've used this term, I haven't used it for a long time in work. It feels like actually, but whenever I've used it in the past, it's been those really quick tests that just tell you, is this even alive or valid or like breathing? It's very quick. It's not deep. They're very shallow and fast. It's literally turn it on and did the light come on? Okay, cool. Then I'm off. That's it. And you might do that for a bunch of different reasons. So you might do it. You might do it when you get a new build in whichever environment. Depending on how you work. That's where I first ran into it back in the day in my waterfall projects. We'd get a new build, we'd deploy it to our environment, or we'd get a new, we'd get a new build, we'd get a new CD with the version of the
Oh
game on it,
yes, yeah.
and we'd put it in the test machine, and if it worked, it turned on, did it boot, could I start the game? That was our smoke test. And so then that was like, okay, yeah. Then we'd let all the other team know, okay, this is working. We can actually use it. So it was like a signal to carry on. Or another common situation I see it in is there is there have been situations and times where testing in production has been either difficult or frowned upon, or both. So you would deploy you'd go through all the different testing in all the different environments. Then you get to production, and because you couldn't go hammer and tongs in production, you would do a smoke test just to make sure. Did we just deploy what we thought we deployed, and is it on fire or not? And if we would confirm those two things, we stopped. That was it. We're like, success.
I think that's interesting because like
Mm.
been having similar thoughts recently with some work, and it's like smoke test for me is that is it alive? Like I'm configured to talk to third party A. Can we talk? We might be talking utter gibberish, right? But there's a connection there. It's alive. It might not be working, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, are you up and running, and can I talk to you? And again, all that for the various third party pieces, or not even just third parties, but also the moving parts of your own system. Like I'm currently learning a lot about AWS. It's all new to me, and the amount of configuration that you can do, and how easy it is to break your app or misconfigure it. Like, so there's all these internal like smoke test or health checks going on. So
Yes.
that's kind of how I get used to it. Like it is, like you said, it's that health check. I think it does come from the original term of electronics, right? Like you turn the thing on and there's
Yeah.
no smoke. But
Yeah.
I don't have any evidence for that memory.
Yeah. You know what? I'd heard that. I'd heard that too. I haven't actually researched that to know if that's a real thing or not, but it sounds plausible. It makes a lot of
if
sense.
if
And
you're
I'm so
listening
glad
and
you
you
used
know, tell us. Yeah.
I'm so glad you used the term health check, because I think that's what they are now. Are health checks. You know, it's all mixed up with monitoring and things like that these days, or at least that's what it feels like.
And I think that's interesting. Like we did a release like today actually, and like there was monitoring in place to tell us that things were working. We could see payments coming in from someone else, so we could have tested a payment flow, but we could see in real time that someone had just paid. So obviously, might not be working right, but it's alive, and someone was able to pay. Um, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. But like, I've also like to. I think we're kind of in agreement with how we view what a smoke test is, but I've also seen it be slightly differently. I've seen it kind of morph into the world of regression, or like a set of
Oh,
end-to-end checks, or
yeah.
like kind of validation tests. I've seen that kind of space as well. It's like want to go a little bit. It's more that instead of the things can talk, it's more that they can talk in this planned way. So yes, they can talk, but I want to know that they're talking correctly for this specific scenario. I don't know if you've come across that.
The example that always springs to mind, and you just reminded me of it again, is I worked at a media company some years ago, quite a big one, at least if you're in the UK, and whenever we did a release, when I was there on this team, there's probably, depending on how you count it, there's basically one thing you wanted to check, and you checked it in maybe 2 or 3 different ways, and that is, can we still sell the TV packages that sell the most? And so long as we can do that, we are golden. So I don't think we called it a smoke test. Actually, it was something else. But we still needed to be able to sell, but not just sell our most popular packages. We had to be able to sell, and so long as we could do that, everything was deemed to be, well, we're fine. We haven't just doomed the company to hideous pain.
Have you ever had to do the old hack of creating a 99% discount code so you can actually buy it in production using a real card instead of
That
doing the full price stuff? I did that
yeah,
at
that
Tesco, I think. Yeah.
100% did that, and also getting the CTO's credit card or somebody's credit
Yeah,
card,
yeah,
because
yeah, done that.
they've got access to whatever levers to get that money back or whatever. So it's like, give us your credit card.
We used to have it where yeah, you'd use our card. I don't know whose it was. It was probably the office's, but then someone would eventually remember it and be like, "Did you cancel it? It's not going to like subscribe again or resubscribe. Like, make sure you cancel it." And then you also had to go and dig out the real receipts because like they treated it as a
Yeah,
genuine expense. So then you had to go
yep,
into the system and get the receipts.
yep.
Um,
Done that. Done that.
yeah.
It's nightmare
So
fuel when
yeah,
you think.
yeah, absolutely. I think well, you touched on testing in production. I think it's a similar thing. Like you can a lot of systems where you want to do that kind of testing, you can get all the way to the basket, but then it's like, well, I don't want to buy it because I don't want to put an order in. I don't want to start shipping things to one Testville in Test Town. Like I don't want to start doing any of that. So like you are limited with the kind of these production kind of smoke tests, full end to end, is whatever we want to call them, like validation tests. Yeah, you are limited with what you can do. But yeah, smoke testing, I think, like you said, health check, keep the lights on,
Mm.
are the lights on even,
Mhm.
and then yeah, I think other things are. I think all these things are valid to do in production. I want to make that clear. Like, I don't think you shouldn't be doing an end-to-end test or going through a purchase. Like, if that suits the context. I'm not saying you should always be doing that. Some systems, like there's a lot of things I can think of go wrong, like metrics and analytics, and go, we keep
It's the
selling
main
this
one.
product that no one buys. We sell one every Friday at 4 p.m. Like, who keeps buying it on Friday at 4 p.m.? Like, um,
The main one for me in my context is testing in production screws up a lot of metrics
does
for
it?
people. Yeah, yeah. So it's really, it's a really, it's a thing we're trying to figure out how to get better at. That's for sure.
Nice. So, our smoke test in this instance is number one: can we record it? Can we edit it? And can we
Yeah.
somehow put it into some tool that distributes it to where hopefully you are listening to it now?
Mm.
And can you watch it on YouTube? So yeah, that's
Yeah.
the plan with this. We're gonna put the video on YouTube, and we will try and distribute the audio podcast kind of version of it across all major platforms, as I hear on some of these more professional pods,
Oh,
or wherever
yeah,
you get your pods from.
yeah, yeah. This is where we drop the cliches now, right? It's like, make sure you
Yeah,
smash that like button, comment,
follow,
subscribe.
follow, and subscribe. Where's the link? I don't know where the link is because I don't know where it goes.
Yeah. Wherever you're listening to this, please leave a 5-star review.
I keep
Uh,
listening to the Diary of a CEO. Very good
Hell yeah.
podcast with Stephen, and his latest thing is the most important thing you can do for this podcast is to follow us on whatever platform you are listening to. It's not about sharing or anything else. All I need you to do is just to follow us on the platform. It will do more good
Yeah.
than I can put into words. So yeah, I'm going to copy him. Follow us, like it, subscribe, do all those fun things that you do on all these platforms. Right. Next topic then.
This is super sketchy, but the thing I wanted to talk about was knowledge work. So why was I thinking about knowledge work? Well, over the past, I don't know, man. It feels like since the beginning of the year, maybe even in December, there've been a ton. LinkedIn is the new Twitter, anyway. So that's where a lot of the cool conversations are happening.
It's true,
And
yeah.
so but there are a lot of conversations that were actually arguments and rows and people sharing opinions and then getting smashed and blasted and then people reacting to that and going around and around in circles like that. From developers saying flamey things about testers and testing, to testers saying, I'm using air quotes if you're listening, the wrong language for certain individuals in certain communities and getting flamed and smashed for that. And it always makes me think of, I don't know why, but it always makes me think of this thing that I first heard Alan Page say like years ago, and it really, really stuck with me. And it was something, I think it was as simple as, look, man, it's all just knowledge work, which was his way of saying testing is not special in that regard because it's another variation or manifestation of knowledge work. And so, over the years, I've always thought about what is knowledge work. And then I read this really cool book by, I'm going to get his name wrong.
Pressure.
I can't remember the name of the book, but I can remember the name. I can't remember the name of the author, but I remember the name of the book. The book is called Same as Ever, and I'll just Google the name of the
I'll
author.
do it for you while you carry on.
And there's the last chapter of that book is absolutely
Morgan
brilliant.
Housel.
Morgan Housel, yeah, that's it. Absolute legend. He was on Diary of a Seer, actually. Definitely go watch the episode.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was reading the last chapter of that book in and around the time these arguments are happening. And he talks in there about why do these things happen? And, it was around, well, if you're an expert in a thing, then people can say things. And to you, they've completely missed the nuance of the topic. And they've just tried to skirt over 1,000,001 things. And you're like, outrageous, how dare you just minimize my whole sphere of study into one pithy line, you devils. And I think that rang true. So that's why it was on my mind. So I went and looked at what knowledge work was and things like that. What do you think what knowledge work is? Have you thought about this much, or?
So I'm thinking two things right now. I'm thinking the context of where you had got this from was obviously in arguments or discussions on LinkedIn, right? So is it that being an active member of a community or being active in the industry and trying to share your knowledge is knowledge work? Or is it that the job of a tester or a QA, QE, whatever, super duper energetic quality engineer or whatever it is that you called at your company? Is it that's knowledge work, or is it sharing that's knowledge work? But just to clarify for me,
I think the definition of knowledge work. Well, I'll start with what isn't knowledge work. So I think the work that isn't knowledge work in the before times is basically manual labor and physical labor, and then knowledge work is not that. So it's not that work that you're always doing stuff with your hands and you're not grinding the gears in the machine or tilling the land or anything. It's more around concepts and information and manipulating that information and processing it in some way, shape, or form. So it's more cognitive in nature and it's more based on expertise, I think. Let me see if I can quickly find the definition.
Yeah, because when you mentioned it to me, I had a quick Google and it was kind of your capital is knowledge. So if you're building something, if you're let's stay in engineering, right? You're a developer. Your capital is probably code or functions or software. Whereas that's what you deliver, right? That's what you build. Obviously, you contribute other stuff too, but predominantly your capital is software. And when you first mentioned this to me, what I started thinking about is, and something I started at that recently at the new job was, I've struggled to get going originally because I was like, I don't have any knowledge. like we're getting tickets and we're discussing things, and like I don't know this system yet. Like I'm hearing the words and you're saying, and I'm trying to make a model in my head, but it ain't forming because it's full of holes, it's full of gaps, right? And I don't have this knowledge. But previously I've kind of always excelled myself or treated that knowledge as kind of my number one asset, is
Okay.
that I have this deep knowledge of the system. And I think interestingly as well, like I always wanted to, I think the way that that changed for me was I kind of went, I had deep knowledge of the system in terms of users, functionality, the pages. And then when I moved into the automation space, I started deepening that knowledge to what's the technology, what's the protocol, how does that talk, how does this happen. So
Hmm.
I kind of viewed myself that I've got all these great skills, and I've got all these techniques and heuristics and coding skills and all this stuff. But my end goal is what I want is information, knowledge, things
Hmm.
that I can communicate back to the team. Like again, an engineer would go, "Hey, here's some working code," and I'm like, "Here's some knowledge." Like, like so that's what I'm trading in. I'm saying like my knowledge is the system behaves and it works. So that's what it made me think of knowledge work. And I think I mentioned to you off air, that's how I've used it in the past. Like I I trade in knowledge, and I gave a talk last year about like gap analysis and how a lot of my work is there suddenly is a gap in my knowledge and I need to fill it. I know a new feature and I don't know anything about that. I need to learn about it. There's a bug in production. I need to learn about that. There's a random error that keeps happening. I want to learn about that. So like most of my day is like basically my mental model of the system is my knowledge, and I spot these gaps and I've got to go and
Mm.
plug them basically.
Yeah, that to me, that is exactly it. And so I love that example because that is what testing is about. It's about trading the knowledge. But what I think the issue is, so when I've dug through my notes here, I, I've got some stuff written down. I was using, ChatGPT, searching, trying to scan a few articles and things. And there are some characteristics of knowledge work that you just talked about. So cognitive effort or complexity is one, specialized knowledge or expertise and skills, innovation and creativity, information processing, and non-routine work. So like problem solving and continuous learning. And and so why part I think at least part of why software testers don't always get the credit and why it's sometimes easy to, you know, be disparaged or not taken seriously is because of the parts that are visible look routine, which a lot of other knowledge workers have. So some of the folks will know that my wife is a solicitor, and solicitors are absolute classics for this because people will go and talk to them for hours on end, and then they won't hear for them for days and days, and then they'll get given a letter, and they're like, "What? That letter's got like 2 paragraphs in it. Why have you?" And you've charged me $10 million for this thing. But what they don't realize is all the training and the expertise and the knowledge and the creativity that has to go into, well, how do I create those paragraphs? What needs to go in there? What do I need to leave out? What are the key points to cover, etc., etc.? And I think it's the same with testing. Um, Certainly traditionally, when I started back in the day, early 2000s, uh, it was very much, at least when I left video games. Video games was weirdly a little bit forward thinking to some degree. It was very
Oh
much
wow.
around test cases.
Yeah,
Like if you don't
yeah,
have any
yeah.
test cases, nothing happened. Basically, was how it worked. So if you don't have any test cases and your work is not visible, then people will just think, well, you're not doing anything. Or they might think, whenever I see Vernon working, he's he's just smashing buttons on a keyboard. That's all he's doing. And it's interesting that you talked about developers and your experience being an automation engineer, because I think they suffer less from that because there's almost this tacit understanding or this assumption that, oh yeah, well that's difficult to
That's
do.
hard. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I know that the work isn't bashing keys on the keyboard. I know they've gone and thought about something because their work product is kind of intangible. I mean, it isn't because you're making a product, but it's kind of intangible. I know that they do stuff on a keyboard, and then magic happened, and now I've got something on the screen, and I don't really understand that. So yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
but
it's trickier for us to make that connection with people.
I think it is. But I think we we don't help ourselves. Like, I could think of a few examples now, but with the programming, with the developers one a thing I've always come across, and it's a quote I heard at a conference that I can never find. I always try and find it, but I don't think it is. Think it's someone's opinion, but it's the distinction between programming and coding. So they made the argument that, and I get them the wrong way around, but I think it's this way around. Programming is thinking of the models of the system, the architecture, the designing, the design patterns, the what should be a config, what shouldn't, right? All the hard work that in some companies, and this I'll relate this back to testing in a second, is done by somebody else. In some
Mhm.
companies, you are given this is how you're going to do it. Here's the architecture. I remember architect role in my very early days was the person who built all the models, built all the
Yeah.
DTOs, built all the stack. And then all
Hmm.
you were doing was using bits of it, right, to do what you wanted. And then they mentioned coding as simply being the bashing of the keys.
Hmm.
And I think we had a distinction in this in the testing space a long time ago. If again, it might be my own experiences, but in my early careers, in my early role, sorry, it was the test leads that would write all the test cases,
Okay.
and I would just get given the test case,
Yeah.
and then I would have to run said test case,
Okay.
obviously using just the explicit knowledge that has been codified into the test case,
Mm.
not all that tacit gold that was sat in the test lead's head as they wrote that test case. And not I get nothing I get none of the stuff that was left out. Why have you decided this flow and not that flow? Why is this not here and why is that not here? So like I wasn't getting any of that information. I was just getting given a test case. So that led to then me obviously doing some of this more work of, trying to understand the test case and running it. But
Hmm.
like back to what you said earlier as well, is my output of that was a pile of passed or failed test cases and maybe a few bug reports, right? My own thinking wasn't captured. My own models, my little scribbles on a piece of paper, my testing story, as I always reference hype whenever I say that, but hype scopes whenever I say testing story, that wasn't being told. My my perceived work was a pile of passed or failed test cases. So that's all they believed I did was read some words, follow the instructions, and tick a box. And I didn't know how to argue back about that at the time. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It's definitely. I couldn't agree more. Like it's the intellectual effort is difficult to perceive. So all of your thinking transformed into a tick or a cross,
yeah,
basically. And like, oh well, if that's all there is to it. Coupled with the fact that everybody tests, and I'm not
yep,
just talking about at work in a software team. I'm talking about after I've had a hard workout at the gym, then and I run myself a hot bath. I don't just dive straight in the bath. Like I'll dip my toe in, I'll ease myself in. That's testing. You make yourself something to eat, you taste it. It's
I
missing
just
something.
made some
That's
peri
testing.
peri sauce just tonight, and as soon as I blitzed it up, I was like, "Ooh, bit hot that." Like
Yeah,
always testing.
yeah, exactly. I'll
I've got a fun
go
test
out
for
for
you,
a date with.
just while you talk about always testing.
Go on.
My car is currently sat at 4% outside my house, and after this, I have to drive it about just a couple of miles to charge it because I haven't got a charger yet. So testing, always testing. um,
Range anxiety is seriously kicking in for me right now. It's not even my car.
but I back onto this idea of knowledge, like knowledge work, or I think just the bit googling I did then, the difference between like a knowledge worker and knowledge work. Like I know that's kind of a very subtle difference,
Hmm.
but those examples that we gave, I've seen the same thing in the automation space, and it's why again I don't think we've shifted the problem from a perception of what the workers testers do, or
Okay.
QAs do, or QEs do, or automation engineers do, because the same thing's happening in automation now. You're being judged by how many tests you automate, right? or your perceived value is the number of tests that you've automated. But
Mm.
actually, the amount of, if you think of building a feature for a piece of software, you've probably got a product owner facilitating, a scrum master, or
Yeah.
something like that. One of these roles,
Yeah.
might have BAs in there, you might have
Yeah.
developers, engineers, senior, all levels, right? They're all contributing to this feature that then gets built and then gets tested. So there's like 5, 6 people or whatever contributing. When it comes to an automated test, it's me, myself, and I. Right? It's
Great shout.
I'm thinking of what to automate. I'm thinking of the test. I need the knowledge. I need the risk. I need the system knowledge to know what layer to do it on. I need the
Mm.
skills to build it in the first place. Then I need the skills to test it. So
Yeah.
I'm doing all those things
Mm.
myself, but the output is still viewed as, oh, you wrote an automated test. Well done, Richard. Well done. Pat on the back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, I did all this. And sometimes you don't get the opportunity to talk about all that extra knowledge work, let's say. And I feel like that's a very similar problem that we've taken, and like, not, we could probably talk about it for hours, but I think that there is a talk or an article or conversation to be had that
I'm right.
automated tests are basically test case 2.0. They've
Oh
gone the
hell yeah.
same way.
Oh hell yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
I had a workshop that I did a few years ago that was about this because I'd realized I'd noticed that that's what I was doing. Um, and that it wasn't I had this allergic reaction to like test cases, which was actually daft. Because there are places where they make sense because I'd made that connection between, oh well, if I'd automated these, suddenly I think that they're valuable just because the mechanism has changed. So there must be something valuable in there, and I just need to get over myself and just figure out, okay, when is it appropriate? What are the strengths and weaknesses of using a test case, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of exploring? And when does it make sense to use one or the other in any given moment? So I think you're spot on there. The article I'm definitely going to write is around knowledge work because I want to explore this idea a bit more. So I want to write some stuff about knowledge work. And if you too are so inspired on hearing us talk about this to create some stuff about it, please do and tag us on all your favorite social media platforms, and we will give you a signal boost for sure.
absolutely. And I think just what you said then about the automated tests, I think it's probably the same thing as programmers building software. Like you said, they don't get judged the same way, and it's probably the same with us. And I think you're absolutely right. There is 100% places for, like, if I think of kind of the 4 key things, you've kind of got this instruction, script, test case, whatever you want to call it. You've got an automated version of that, which can obviously run itself. You've then got the exploratory kind of base exploration type of testing. And then you've got tools that can kind of support it. And I think it's funny what you said, though, that suddenly it's valuable because I've automated it. Yet in some of the training that I do, I talk about how that a lot of its value has been lost. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I give you a test case to run, you don't follow my test case.
Mm-hmm.
You'll read it and you'll definitely do what it says, but you're also going to do 50, 100, 200 other things that
Exactly.
aren't written on that test case. And even
Yeah.
more fun, back to knowledge work, you ain't going to tell me that you did those things either. And you ain't going to tell anyone else.
You
Like,
may not be explicitly aware of it yourself. That's the really, really interesting
true.
thing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then you've got, then when you automate it, you kind of lose that serendipity aspect of it, but you
Yeah.
gain speed, repetition.
Yeah. That's it.
Um, So it's this trade off. And I think, like you said, it's the
That's
same with a
it.
test case.
Yeah.
Sometimes in some domains, you're going to have to write very lengthy, explicit, anyone can follow test cases.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you might meet in the middle. I'm in a context now where we're kind of meeting in the middle. We're avoiding writing, we'll say, log in as a X user. We're not defining what X user is or what the credentials are. We're telling you to buy a premium package, but we're not telling you which premium package to buy because it's not necessarily required. So we're saving a bit of time by not going into the very explicits,
Yeah.
but it's still a lot more than a charter, right? It's still a set of instructions you can follow with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of domain knowledge. And it's part of our transition or the journey that we're on to getting it automated. There's a lot of hurdles in place right now that means it can't just be automated. Access, knowledge, a working architecture, a working framework. So we're on our journey. Like, I'm not saying like we're not going to be in this position for a long time. We're probably only going to be in this position for a few months. But in those few months period, a test case makes sense. It fits the problem space. It helps. So
well said.
Well said. All right, so there we go. That was the smoke test. So if you enjoyed listening to the pod, do all the things that a podcast hosts are meant to say. Subscribe, follow, like, reshare, tell your friends, tell your family. Listen, and give us any comments, any feedbacks. Definitely start conversations around the topics that we've been discussing.
I just wanted to say, if there's anything that you liked about the podcast, please send it to me. If anything you didn't like, send it to Rich. That's key.
We need to get a domain set up and get some rules. I'm going to code some rules. Get something, run it through an AI that says, is this nice or bad? Redirect it this way. Get a little model on the go.
But jokes aside, welcome, because this is an experiment for us. We're trying to figure out if this is. We're just doing this kind of for ourselves first and foremost, but we also want it to be useful for more than us two. So if you've got any feedback, comments, concerns, please let us know. We would appreciate it.
And if you are listening to this, or you've just finished listening to this, you'll be pleased to know that all the smoke tests have passed. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you at the next one.
See you, everybody.